Today we're going to talk about a man named Friedrich Ruttner. His life story, well, it holds one of the most jarring and honestly startling contradictions I think I've ever come across. It's a story all about science, about ideology, and about a life that was literally split into two completely different worlds. You see, for anyone who studies bees, Friedrich Ruttner was a giant, a legend. His work completely changed how we understand these incredible insects. He was a celebrated pioneer, a name that's basically synonymous with the modern study of bees, or apidology. Okay, so let's dive into that first part of his life, right? The incredible scientific achievements that built his famous post-war reputation. This is the Friedrich Ruttner that the world knew, the one they celebrated for decades. Let's go to 1948. This year was absolutely huge for him. Just a few years after World War II, Ruttner and his family set up this working group on bee genetics, and it was there that he made his first massive discovery. He proved that a queen bee doesn't just mate with one drone. Nope, she mates with multiple drones. That alone was a gigantic leap forward for the field. And after that, his career just exploded. He became a professor of zoology. He was the director of the super prestigious Institute for Apiculture for almost 20 years. He co-founded Apidology, which is still a major scientific journal today. And he wrote the book on honeybees. I mean, this is the kind of legacy that makes you a pillar of the scientific community. It's an absolutely incredible career, right? By any measure. But what if I told you that's not the whole story? Not even close. In fact, it's not even his first career. The celebrated bee scientist had a past, a whole other chapter of his life that was very deliberately and very effectively kept hidden for years. So, to really understand the man, we have to go back. We need to unearth that buried chapter, the part of his life that happened before 1945. And when you look at the timeline, it's pretty shocking how early and deep his involvement was. In 1934, he joins the SA, the Nazis' original stormtroopers. By 36, he's actually convicted of a crime for illegal Nazi activities. And then in 1938, he doesn't just join the Nazi Party, he also joins the SS. This wasn't some passive thing. This was an active, all-in commitment that ended with him working at a eugenics institute. And get this is a really crucial piece of the puzzle. He wasn't just a party member. He was listed as an SS doctor. He was using his medical training at an institute that was dedicated to eugenics, the very ideological cornerstone of Nazi racial policy. And then, just like that, in 1945, this entire first career came to a screeching halt. The war ends, the Allies start the process of denazification, and Ruttner is kicked out of his university position. The door on his life as a eugenics researcher was slammed shut. So, here's the big question, right? How on earth do you reconcile these two things, these two completely separate opposing lives, all inside one man? How do you go from being an SS doctor to a world-famous zoologist? I mean, just look at this comparison. It perfectly lays out this double life he was leading. On one side, you've got the SS doctor, the eugenics researcher, politically active and ultimately fired. On the other side, the celebrated professor, the pioneer of bee genetics, connected to scientists all over the world who retired with honors. The contrast is just staggering. But you know what's maybe the most fascinating part of this whole story? It wasn't just what he studied that changed. It was a radical shift in his entire scientific philosophy. He moved from pure ideology to pure objectivity. So his first career was all about eugenics. And let's be really clear about what that is. We're not talking about real science here. It's an ideology. It's a political project based on totally subjective, unscientific ideas about racial purity, which was then used to justify the most horrific state policies imaginable. Now let's flip the coin completely. In his second life, he championed something called morphometrics. And it's the polar opposite. This is all about the quantitative, statistical analysis of an organism's form. It's about taking incredibly precise measurements to classify things as objectively as is humanly possible. So in his work with bees, it's like he built this entirely new foundation for his science. He threw out subjective traits like color, which, by the way, had been used to classify bee races, and instead he insisted on precise statistical measurements. He used cold, hard data to differentiate subspecies, and he built a massive database, so everything could be compared rigorously. It was a total rejection of the methods of his past. So, what are we supposed to make of all this? Where does it leave us? Well, it leaves us with this deeply complex, deeply contradictory legacy of a man who somehow lived at both extremes of 20th century history. What we're left with is this stark, unbelievable duality. On one hand, you have an active participant in the ideologically driven pseudoscientific horror of Nazi eugenics. And on the other, a celebrated leader who pushed biology toward being more objective and more rigorous. Both of these men were Friedrich Ruttner. And that leaves us, and you, with a really tough, kind of unsettling question that his life forces us to ask. When we look at his incredible contributions to science, can we, or even should we, separate that work from the man who did it and from the past that he lived? It's a question that honestly just doesn't have an easy answer.